The morning sun cast long shadows across the academy training grounds. 24 cadets from 12 different worlds sat in the curved amphitheater, their various forms creating a colorful display of galactic diversity. Some had scales, others had fur. A few had extra arms or tentacles. Their uniforms were all the same deep blue, but their bodies told stories of 1,000 different evolutionary paths. Commander stood at the front of the room. His tall, thin frame and silver skin marked him as one of the oldest spacefaring races in the galaxy. His 4 eyes scanned the assembled students with the patience of someone who had taught this lesson many times before. Today was different, though. Today was the final test for advanced threat assessment. Cadets, his voice carried clearly through the room without the need for amplification. You have studied for 6 months. You have learned to identify weapons, read body language across 47 species, and understand the psychology of warfare. Today we see if you actually learned anything. The students straightened in their seats. Some of the more nervous ones fidgeted with their data tablets. A cadet in the 3rd row ran her clawed hand through her bright red mane. Next to her, a cybernetically enhanced Nexus operative's eye implants glowed softly as he accessed his internal databases. Commander activated the large holographic display that dominated the front wall. Your final examination is simple. I will show you a group of individuals. Your job is to identify which one represents the greatest potential threat. You have 30 minutes to study them, and then you will submit your choice with a detailed explanation. The hologram flickered to life, showing a staging area that looked like a waiting room. 15 beings sat or stood in various positions, apparently waiting for something. The display was incredibly detailed, showing every texture, every movement, every small gesture. The cadets immediately began taking notes. Their eyes moved quickly from figure to figure, cataloging what they saw. In the center of the display stood a massive warrior. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their strength and honor-based culture. This one wore ceremonial armor that gleamed under the artificial lights. Ritual scars covered his visible skin, each one telling a story of battles won. His 4 arms held weapons that looked ancient but well-maintained. Several cadets immediately began writing detailed notes about him. To the left, a figure in dark robes caught many eyes. The face was hidden under a deep hood, but the way it moved suggested grace and deadly purpose. An umbral assassin, most likely. Their species was legendary for their ability to kill silently and vanish like smoke. 2 cadets were already marking this figure as their primary choice. Near the back of the display, a berserker paced restlessly. Her bright orange fur was braided with small bones and metal trinkets. Scars crossed her arms and face like a roadmap of violence. Every few seconds, she would bare her fangs at nothing in particular. Her reputation for entering blood rage during combat was well known throughout the academy. A Nexus operative stood perfectly still near the wall. Half of his body had been replaced with gleaming cybernetics. His left arm was clearly a weapon system, and his eyes glowed with the telltale sign of active combat software. The way he scanned the room suggested he was already calculating kill ratios and escape routes. Other figures filled out the scene. A heavily muscled mercenary with plasma burns on his armor. A thin poison master whose fingers dripped with something that made the air shimmer. A robotic consensus unit whose weapons were built into its frame. And then there was the human. She sat in the 3rd row of chairs, quietly reading something on a small tablet. Dr. Sarah, according to the nameplate that floated above her head, 34 years old from Earth. Her clothes were simple and practical. She wore glasses that she occasionally pushed up her nose when they slipped down. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No visible weapons, no armor, no cybernetic enhancements. Most of the cadets barely glanced at her. When they did, it was only to quickly dismiss her as obviously harmless. She looked like exactly what her file said she was, someone who studied alien cultures for academic purposes. The cadet, looked at the human for perhaps 3 seconds before turning her attention back to the warrior. Obviously the biggest threat, she muttered to herself, making notes about the warrior's weapon configuration. The Nexus cadet, designated Unit 47, ran facial recognition on every figure in the display. When he reached the human, his systems tagged her as civilian, non-combatant, minimal threat potential. He moved on to analyzing the assassin's hidden weapons. Around the room, similar dismissals happened. The human was too small, too weak, too obviously peaceful to be worth serious consideration. She was the kind of person you protected, not the kind you worried about. Doctor continued reading her tablet, occasionally making small notes with a stylus. Sometimes she would look up and observe the other figures in the waiting room for a few moments before returning to her reading. Her movements were calm and measured. She seemed completely unaware that she was being evaluated as a potential threat. Commander watched his students work. His expression remained neutral, but those who knew him well might have noticed a slight tightening around his eyes. He had administered this test 17 times to previous classes. The results were always the same. Time passed slowly in the amphitheater. The cadets debated quietly among themselves, comparing notes and theories. The debate mainly focused on 3 figures: the warrior, the umbral assassin, and the berserker. A few students argued for the Nexus operative or the poison master. Nobody mentioned the human. 10 minutes remaining, Commander announced. The pace of discussion increased. Students began finalizing their choices and writing their explanations. Combat experience, weapon capabilities, known behavioral patterns, historical precedent. All the factors they had been taught to consider were carefully weighed and documented. Doctor looked up from her tablet and seemed to notice the other figures in the waiting room for the first time. She studied each one with the mild curiosity of an academic. When her gaze passed over the warrior, she made a small note. When she observed the assassin, she made another note. Her expression remained pleasantly interested, like someone cataloging interesting specimens. "Time," Commander called out. The holographic display froze. Doctor was captured in the middle of making another note. Her stylus paused above her tablet. The cadets submitted their answers electronically. Commander reviewed them quickly, his expression growing more serious with each response. When he finished, he looked at his students with something that might have been disappointment or perhaps pity. "Before we discuss your answers," he said slowly, "I want you all to understand something. This test has been given to over 400 cadets from 23 different species. The results are always the same." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Every single one of you has failed." The silence that followed was complete. Even the soft humming of the building's life support systems seemed too loud. "You all chose different targets. Some of you picked the warrior. Others chose the assassin or the berserker. A few selected the cybernetic operative or the poison master, but every single one of you picked the wrong target." Commander's 4 eyes swept across the confused faces of his students. The greatest threat in that room was sitting quietly in row 3, reading a tablet and taking notes, and not one of you even considered her a possibility. The confusion in the amphitheater was thick enough to cut. Cadet was the first to speak, her voice carrying the edge that all had when they were frustrated. "Commander, with respect, that makes no sense. The human is obviously civilian. No weapons, no combat training, no physical advantages. How could she possibly be more dangerous than a warrior?" Several other cadets nodded in agreement. The Nexus operative, Unit 47, spoke next. His voice had the mechanical precision typical of his species. "My analysis confirms this assessment. The human female exhibits no threat indicators. Her file lists her as Dr. Sarah from Earth. Academic background, no military service, no criminal record." Commander studied his students for a long moment. Then he activated a new display. Doctor's image appeared, but this time it was surrounded by flowing streams of data. Files, records, research papers, and classified reports began cascading around her holographic form. "Let me tell you about Dr. Sarah," the commander said. "She is indeed one of the best in the galaxy, actually. Her specialty is studying what she calls aggressive species psychology. She has published 47 papers on the subject." The data streams highlighted specific research titles as he spoke. The cadets leaned forward to read them, their expressions growing more uncomfortable with each line. "Pressure point analysis across 47 species," Commander read aloud. "Cultural elimination through strategic infrastructure targeting. Psychological warfare applications in multi-species environments. Efficient pacification protocols for hostile alien encounters." A cadet, her blue skin turning a darker shade, raised her thin hand. "Commander, those sound like military papers, not anthropology." "An excellent observation, Cadet Ra. They are military papers. Doctor just calls them anthropology." He highlighted another section of her file. "She is also the author of what humans call the Galactic Species Weakness Compendium. It is a classified document that details exactly how to destroy every major civilization in known space." The silence that followed this revelation was different from before. This was the silence of people beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. Commander continued, his voice steady but grim. "Doctor holds advanced degrees in cultural dynamics, biochemistry, and what humans call asymmetric warfare theory. She speaks fluent versions of 36 alien languages and has lived embedded in 14 different societies for extended periods." More files appeared around the hologram, photos of Doctor in various settings throughout the galaxy, on a Nexus research station, in a war camp, at an honor ceremony. In each image, she looked perfectly harmless and appropriately curious for an academic. "During her time on the Nexus station," Commander explained, "she was studying what she called cybernetic integration patterns in post-biological societies. The Nexus granted her full access to their archives because they believed she was writing a cultural study. She was actually mapping their entire network infrastructure and identifying single points of failure. Unit 47's optical implants flickered rapidly. That information could be used to crash our entire civilization." Yes, it could. During her 6 months with the Third War Pack, she was supposedly documenting their honor-based conflict resolution systems. In reality, she was learning exactly how to manipulate psychology to trigger clan wars that would destroy them from within. Cadet's mane bristled with anger. The pack leaders would never have allowed that. The pack leaders thought she was writing a book about how wonderful culture was. They were proud to help her. They showed her everything, told her all their secrets, explained their weaknesses, because she was just a harmless human scholar who admired them. The weight of this information settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Commander activated another display showing a detailed timeline of human expansion into galactic space. Humans have been members of the Galactic Council for 87 years. In that time, they have never started a war, never made territorial demands, never even raised their voice in diplomatic meetings. They are model citizens, peaceful, curious, helpful. He paused to let this sink in before continuing. They are also the only species to achieve while simultaneously driving multiple subspecies of their own kind to complete extinction. They are the only known race to weaponize everything they have ever encountered. Gravity, disease, weather, atomic particles, quantum fields, time dilation, social psychology. The hologram now showed images from Earth's history. Wars, weapons, destruction on a scale that made the assembled cadets uncomfortable. Their home planet is a death world by galactic standards. Too much gravity, too much radiation, an atmosphere that is poison to most life forms, weather patterns that could kill most of us in minutes. They evolved in constant competition with everything around them, including each other. A cadet, his massive frame making the chair creak, spoke up. "But Commander, they seem so peaceful now. They've never threatened anyone." Commander's expression became almost sad. "That is exactly the point, Cadet K. Doctor has been at this academy for 6 months. She is here as part of a cultural exchange program, supposedly to learn about our military training methods for her research." The display changed to show security footage of Doctor during her time at the academy, talking with students in the cafeteria, observing training exercises, asking questions during lectures. What she has actually been doing is conducting the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation in Academy history. Watch her carefully. The footage played at normal speed, but now the cadets could see what they had missed before. Doctor, seemingly innocent questions were actually detailed interrogations. Her casual conversations were systematic information gathering. Her friendly interest in different species was actually threat assessment. During a casual lunch conversation with Cadet Unit 47, she learned about Nexus emergency protocols, backup command structures, and critical system dependencies. During a study session with Cadet, she mapped pack hierarchies, honor-debt relationships, and clan rivalry patterns. Each cadet mentioned looked increasingly uncomfortable as they realized how much they had revealed without thinking about it. "She has been taking notes this entire time, not about our military tactics or our weapons or our strategies, about us, about how we think, what scares us, what we value, where we are vulnerable." The final piece of footage showed Doctor in the Academy library, working late at night. She was surrounded by databases containing information about every major species in the galaxy. Her tablet showed complex charts and graphs mapping psychological pressure points and cultural weak spots. "What you are seeing," Commander said quietly, "is someone who has spent 6 months learning exactly how to destroy every person in this room, and by extension, every civilization they represent." The amphitheater fell completely silent. Several cadets looked sick, others appeared angry, a few seemed terrified. "But here is the most disturbing part," the commander continued. "Doctor is not unique. Every human civilian in galactic space appears to be conducting similar research. We have been studying this pattern for the last 5 years." He activated one final display showing a galactic map dotted with thousands of markers. Human traders who somehow always know the most efficient trade routes and the most vulnerable supply lines. Human engineers who always end up working on critical infrastructure projects. Human artists whose work seems to map the psychological architecture of alien societies. Human tourists who ask very specific questions about local defenses and government structures. The markers on the map pulsed softly, showing the distribution of humans throughout galactic civilization. For 87 years, we have welcomed humans as peaceful newcomers to galactic society. We have shared our cultures, our knowledge, our worlds with them. And for 87 years, they have been quietly, systematically, and very politely gathering every piece of information they would need to eliminate us all. Commander looked at his stunned students. "That woman sitting in row 3 reading a tablet. She already knows exactly how to destroy every civilization represented in this room. And the truly terrifying part is that she learned it all just by being friendly and asking innocent questions." The revelation about Doctor had shaken the cadets, but Commander was not finished. He could see in their faces that they were beginning to understand, but they still did not grasp the full scope of what they were dealing with. "I can see that you are starting to comprehend the situation," he said, walking slowly across the front of the amphitheater. "But what I have shown you so far is just one human in one location, conducting one small operation. The reality is much more extensive." He activated a new display that showed the entire galaxy. Thousands of tiny blue dots appeared, scattered across every inhabited system. Each blue dot represents a human civilian currently living or working somewhere in galactic space. There are currently 2.7 million humans spread across our civilization. Cadet Ra raised her hand tentatively. Commander, humans are a spacefaring species. It's natural that they would explore and settle throughout the galaxy. You are correct, Cadet. What is not natural is the pattern of their settlement. The display zoomed in on various sectors. Humans show up in very specific places. They always manage to get jobs or positions that give them access to critical information. The map highlighted various installations throughout the galaxy. Military bases, research stations, government centers, manufacturing hubs. Dr. Human Engineer was hired to help upgrade the defense systems on Nexus Prime. During his work, he gained complete access to their planetary shield generators. His official report suggested several improvements. His personal files contained detailed information about how to overload the entire system. Another section of the map lit up. Dr. Lisa Park, human cultural, spent 3 years studying military traditions. She wrote a beautiful book about their warrior culture that became very popular among her hosts. She also compiled a secret report detailing exactly how to corrupt their honor codes and turn their military units against each other. More locations appeared on the display. Professor, human historian, was given access to the complete archives of the Empire to research ancient trade routes. His academic papers were well received. His classified files contained detailed maps of every strategic resource deposit in space. Commander paused to let this information settle. The pattern repeats everywhere. Humans arrive as scholars, engineers, artists, traders, diplomats. They are welcomed because they seem harmless and genuinely interested in learning about other cultures. And everywhere they go, they quietly gather exactly the information needed to destroy their hosts. Cadet K, the Massive, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Commander, are you saying all human civilians are spies? That is exactly what I'm saying, Cadet, but it's worse than traditional espionage. Traditional spies gather specific information for immediate military purposes. Humans appear to be conducting something much more comprehensive. The display changed to show a complex labeled Human Intelligence Gathering Protocol. I'll call it the Human Documentation Project. Every human in galactic space appears to be participating in a comprehensive mapping operation. They are documenting every weakness, every vulnerability, every pressure point of every species they encounter. This showed how information flowed from individual humans back to various Earth-based organizations. The merchant who knows which trade routes are most vulnerable reports back to something called the Colonial Development Council. The engineer who understands alien infrastructure sends data to the Technical Exchange Program. The anthropologist who maps psychological weaknesses files reports with the Cultural Studies Institute. Unit 47's optical implants flickered rapidly as he processed this information. Commander, those sound like civilian academic organizations. They do sound like that, Commander agreed. That appears to be intentional. Every piece of intelligence goes back to Earth through channels that look completely innocent, but when you combine all of it together. The display now showed a three-dimensional model of galactic civilization as seen through human eyes. Every planet, every space station, every government, every military installation was mapped in extraordinary detail. Weak points were highlighted in red. Critical infrastructure was marked. Population centers were analyzed. This is how humans see the galaxy, Commander said quietly. Not as a collection of diverse civilizations to learn from and trade with, as a complex system to be understood, mapped, and controlled. The silence in the amphitheater was oppressive. Several cadets looked physically ill. But surely, Cadet said desperately, this is just standard intelligence gathering. Every species does some level of reconnaissance. Commander nodded. Every species gathers intelligence about potential threats, but humans are different. They gather intelligence about everyone, including species that could never possibly threaten Earth. The display showed Earth's position relative to the galaxy. It was in a remote spiral arm, protected by dangerous gravitational anomalies and cosmic radiation fields. For example, are a peaceful trading species with no military to speak of. They pose no possible threat to anyone. Yet humans have detailed plans for eliminating civilization through targeted introduction of modified bacteria that would destroy their food supply. Cadet Ra made a small choking sound. The Gentle Collective are literally pacifists. They have never fought a war in their entire recorded history. Humans have documented how to use their own humanitarian instincts against them, turning their refugee assistance programs into vectors for cultural contamination. More examples appeared on the display, species after species, all with detailed elimination protocols developed by human researchers. What you must understand, Commander continued, is that humans approach every relationship as a potential future conflict. They do not gather intelligence because they plan to attack. They gather intelligence because they want to be prepared if they ever need to attack. The display changed to show comparative military doctrine across several species. Most species plan for specific threats. Nexus doctrine focuses on cyber warfare because that is their strength. Strategy emphasizes honor combat because that fits their culture. Tactics center on heavy assault because that is what they know. Human doctrine is different. They plan for everything. Every possible scenario, every potential enemy, every conceivable threat. They have war plans for species they have never met, located in sectors they have never visited. Commander highlighted a section of the display showing human strategic planning. They call it comprehensive threat preparedness. We call it something else entirely. The phrase that appeared on the display made several cadets gasp. XENOCIDAL Readiness Protocol. Humans have developed detailed plans for eliminating every major civilization in the galaxy, not because they want to, not because they plan to, but because they want to be ready if they ever decide they need to. The weight of this revelation settled over the room like a physical presence. And the most terrifying aspect of all of this, Commander said, his voice barely above a whisper, is that it is working exactly as they intended. For 87 years, we have been completely unaware that it was happening. He looked at each of his students in turn. Every time you met a human, every time you had a friendly conversation with one, every time you helped them with their research or answered their questions, you were participating in the most successful intelligence operation in galactic history. And the worst part is that they did not need to force any of you to cooperate. You did it willingly, happily, because you wanted to be helpful to the friendly humans who seemed so interested in your culture. The final image that appeared on the display was Doctor, still sitting in row 3, still reading her tablet, still looking completely harmless. That woman has enough information in her personal files to cripple half the galaxy, and she gathered it all just by being polite and asking the right questions. Commander turned off the display and faced his stunned students. Now do you understand why every one of you failed this test? Commander could see that his students were beginning to understand, but he needed them to grasp the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. The next part of the lesson would be the most difficult for them to accept. I want you to consider a hypothetical situation, he said, beginning to pace slowly across the front of the amphitheater. Imagine that tomorrow morning, the human government decides that galactic civilization poses a threat to Earth. How long would it take them to eliminate every major species in the galaxy? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Cadet Unit 47 was the first to attempt an answer. Commander, Even with detailed intelligence, humans lack the military capability for large-scale interstellar warfare. Their fleet is small, their technology is not advanced, their population is limited. An excellent analysis, Cadet, Commander replied. You are thinking like a conventional military strategist. Humans do not think like conventional military strategists. He activated a new display showing what appeared to be a timeline extending into the future. Humans would not need fleets or armies or advanced weapons. They have something much more effective, complete knowledge of how we think, what we need, and where we are vulnerable. The timeline began to populate with events, all projected to occur within the first week of hypothetical human action. Day 1. Doctor and 47 other human anthropologists in various locations throughout the galaxy upload specific psychological manipulation protocols to galactic communication networks. The messages are tailored for each species, designed to trigger maximum anxiety and paranoia. Day 2. Clans receive perfectly crafted insults to their honor, apparently from rival clans. Military units get orders that seem to come from their commanders but actually originate from human hackers who understand their command protocols. Nexus nodes begin receiving logic puzzles designed to crash their processing systems. The cadets watched in growing horror as the timeline continued. Day 3. Human engineers at critical infrastructure points begin implementing the improvements they suggested over the years. Power grids fail in precisely calculated sequences. Life support systems develop mysterious glitches. Transportation networks shut down. Cadet Ra raised her hand, trembling. But Commander, humans would need to be in position at all these critical locations. They already are in position, Cadet. That is the point. Every human civilian in galactic space is potentially an asset in this operation. The merchant who knows the vulnerable trade routes, the engineer who upgraded your defense systems, the artist whose sculptures map your psychological pressure points. Commander highlighted specific points on the galactic map. Doctor, who helped design the Nexus defense grid, has built-in override codes that only he knows about. Dr. Park, who studied military culture, knows exactly which orders will cause their units to turn on each other. Professor, who researched trade routes, knows which supply lines to cut to cause maximum economic damage. Day 4. Food supplies begin to fail. Humans have been studying galactic agriculture for decades. They know which crops each species depends on, which genetic modifications keep them stable, which pests could destroy them. Modified organisms begin spreading through agricultural systems. The timeline showed cascading failures across multiple sectors of galactic civilization. Day 5. Governments begin to collapse. Human diplomats and cultural have spent years learning exactly which political pressure points will cause maximum instability. They know which leaders to remove, which factions to support, which cultural symbols to destroy. Day 6. Communication networks fail completely. Human information specialists have been mapping galactic data systems for decades. They know every node, every backup system, every alternative pathway. When they decide to cut communications, entire sectors go dark. Commander paused at Day 7. The timeline showed most galactic civilization in complete chaos. Day 7. Humans stop. They do not need to continue. By this point, most major civilizations are so damaged that they will take decades to recover if they recover at all. The silence in the amphitheater was complete. Several cadets looked physically sick. The most terrifying aspect of this scenario, Commander continued quietly, is that humans would accomplish all of this without firing a single shot, without launching a single ship, without declaring war on anyone. They would simply activate knowledge they already possess and implement plans they have already developed. All the weapons they need are already in place, operated by people who think they are helping friendly human colleagues. Cadet spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. How is it possible that no one noticed this pattern before? Commander smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because humans are very good at this. They have been practicing for their entire evolutionary history. A new display showed images from Earth's past. On their home world, humans spent in competition with other human groups. They developed warfare into an art form. Not just physical warfare, but psychological warfare, economic warfare, cultural warfare. They learned to use everything as a weapon. The images showed the complexity of human conflict throughout their history. When they met other humans, they had to be clever. Their enemies were as smart as they were, as adaptable as they were, as dangerous as they were. So they learned to think in terms of long-term strategic planning, comprehensive intelligence gathering, and multidimensional attacks. When they entered galactic civilization, they met us. We are not as clever as other humans. We are not as adaptable. We are not as dangerous. For humans, gathering intelligence on us is easier than gathering intelligence on their own species. Commander activated footage of various human-alien interactions from the Academy's archives. Watch Doctor again. Notice how she approaches different species differently. With she appeals to their pride and honor. With Nexus operatives, she presents logical arguments and data requests. With she shows proper respect for their military traditions. The footage showed Doctor adapting her communication style perfectly for each species she encountered. She is not just gathering intelligence. She is practicing the psychological manipulation techniques she will use if humans ever decide to implement their plans. Every conversation is training. Every friendly interaction is a rehearsal. And we never notice because to us, she just seems like a very pleasant human who is good at making friends with different species. The final piece of footage showed Doctor in what appeared to be a private moment, updating her files late at night in her quarters. Her expression was completely different from her public face. Cold, calculating, focused. This is what Doctor looks like when she thinks no one is watching. This is the face of someone who has spent 6 months learning exactly how to destroy everyone around her. The cadets stared at the image in shock. The transformation was complete and disturbing. But perhaps most disturbing of all, Commander said, is that Doctor probably does not think of herself as a spy or a threat. She probably genuinely believes she is conducting academic research. He displayed what appeared to be excerpts from her personal journal. Her private writings suggest that she finds alien cultures fascinating and wants to understand them better. She writes about making friends, learning new perspectives, contributing to galactic knowledge. She appears to sincerely believe that her research is beneficial. The fact that her research could be used to eliminate the very culture she claims to admire does not seem to concern her. From her perspective, knowledge is always good, regardless of how it might be used. Commander turned to face his students directly. And that, cadets, is perhaps the most human thing of all. They can prepare for your complete destruction while genuinely believing they are your friends. They can develop detailed plans for eliminating your species while sincerely enjoying your company. They do not see any contradiction in this because, from their perspective, preparation is just common sense. They are not planning to attack you. They are just making sure they would be ready if circumstances ever required it. The final image on the display was Doctor again, smiling warmly as she talked with a group of alien students in the academy cafeteria. That woman could kill everyone in this room with her bare hands if she needed to, but she would probably feel genuinely sad about it afterward. The weight of revelation hung over the amphitheater like a suffocating blanket. Commander looked at his students and saw exactly what he expected to see: fear, confusion, and growing anger. It was time for the final part of the lesson. Now that you understand the scope of the situation, he said quietly, you face a choice. the same choice that galactic leadership has been debating for the past 5 years. He activated a new display showing 3 distinct options. Option 1. Classify humanity as a galactic-level threat. Implement immediate defensive measures. Begin preparations for preemptive action against Earth and all human colonies. Several cadets nodded. This seemed like the obvious response to what they had learned. Option 2. Attempt diplomatic solutions. Confront human leadership with evidence of their intelligence gathering. Demand transparency and limitations on human civilian activities. A few other students looked thoughtful. This approach seemed more measured. Option 3. Learn from humanity's approach. Acknowledge that our current methods of threat assessment and defense are inadequate. Implement comprehensive security reforms based on human techniques. Commander studied their faces. Before you decide, I need to show you one more thing. The display changed to show Doctor in the test scenario again. But this time, instead of focusing on her, the camera pulled back to show the entire waiting room from a different angle. While you were studying the obvious threats in that room, Doctor was conducting her own assessment, not just of the fighters you were analyzing, but of something else entirely. The footage showed Doctor's tablet screen. Instead of notes about the warrior or the umbral assassin, her screen displayed detailed profiles of the cadets in the amphitheater. Each student was analyzed, categorized, evaluated. She was not studying the threats in the test scenario. She was studying you. The realization hit the room like a physical blow. While they had been evaluating her, she had been evaluating them. Her notes included psychological profiles of each species represented in this classroom. Combat capabilities, decision-making patterns, likely responses to stress, optimal manipulation techniques. Commander highlighted specific entries from her tablet. Pride-driven, respond well to challenges, vulnerable to honor-based manipulation. Nexus, logic-focused, seek efficiency, can be confused with paradoxes. Grown, strength-oriented, respect direct communication, fear being perceived as weak. Each cadet mentioned looked increasingly uncomfortable as they realized how accurately they had been assessed. But her most interesting notes were not about individual species. They were about galactic military doctrine in general. Doctor's analysis appeared on the screen. Subjects demonstrate typical galactic threat assessment patterns. Focus exclusively on obvious physical threats, unable to identify strategic, psychological, or cultural dangers. Threat evaluation protocols are fundamentally inadequate for complex scenarios. Her conclusion was simple. Galactic civilization is defensively naive to a dangerous degree. Commander paused to let this sink in. Doctor was not just gathering intelligence for potential human operations. She was evaluating galactic civilization's ability to recognize and respond to real threats. Which brings us to the most important question of all, he continued. Why would humans spend 87 years documenting our weaknesses if they never intended to use that information against us? The question hung in the air. Several cadets looked confused by the implication. 5 years ago, our intelligence services discovered the pattern of human information gathering. We began investigating, expecting to uncover evidence of hostile intent. Instead, we found something much more disturbing. A new display showed intelligence, reports from the galactic frontier. Beyond the edge of known space, our deep scouts have been detecting signs of something approaching, something that makes every threat we have studied look insignificant by comparison. The reports described anomalous readings, destroyed probe ships, and increasing activity in the dark regions between galaxies. We do not know what it is yet. We do not know when it will arrive, but we do know that when it comes, it will be unlike anything galactic civilization has ever faced. Commander's expression grew grim. Human leadership has been aware of this approaching threat for approximately 100 years. Their deep space monitoring networks detected the signs long before ours did. They have been preparing, not to conquer the galaxy but to defend it. The realization rippled through the amphitheater as students began to understand. Every piece of intelligence they gathered, every weakness they documented, every elimination protocol they developed, all of it was preparation for defending galactic civilization against something that could destroy it completely. Humans learned long ago that the best defense is comprehensive knowledge of what you are defending. They cannot protect civilizations they do not understand. They cannot develop defense strategies for species whose psychology they have not mapped. Commander activated footage of human defensive installations being constructed in deep space. While we have been focused on local conflicts and familiar threats, humans have been building the early warning systems and defense networks that will protect all of us when the real danger arrives. Their anthropologists are not just gathering intelligence. They are learning how to preserve alien cultures when those cultures come under attack from something that wants to eliminate them entirely. Doctor appeared on the screen again, but now her research took on a completely different meaning. Doctor's work on efficient pacification protocols was not about how to destroy alien species. It was about how to quickly neutralize hostile forces that might try to destroy alien species. Her studies of cultural pressure points were not about manipulation for conquest. They were about understanding what each civilization values most, so those things can be protected when everything else is under attack. The silence in the amphitheater was different now. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Humans call it the sheep's clothing protocol. They deliberately maintain an appearance of harmlessness while conducting the most comprehensive defense operation in galactic history. They let us underestimate them because they need us to trust them. They need access to our societies, our technologies, our knowledge, not to use against us but to use for us when the time comes. Commander looked at each of his students. Doctor could indeed eliminate everyone in this room if she wanted to, but she does not want to. She wants to make sure that when something else tries to eliminate us, she knows exactly how to stop it. The final footage showed Doctor packing up her materials and preparing to leave the test scenario. As she reached the door, she paused and looked back at the camera. For a moment, her carefully maintained academic demeanor slipped, and something else showed through. Not the cold calculation they had seen before, but something that looked almost like sadness. The test was never about whether you could identify her as a threat, Commander said quietly. The test was about whether you could identify threats at all. Your species have survived this long because you have never encountered anything that actually wanted to harm you. That is not a strength. That is just luck. Doctor's voice came through the speakers, her words clearly directed at the camera. And luck runs out. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. The approaching threat will not announce itself. It will not wear uniforms or carry obvious weapons. It will not follow any of the threat patterns you have been trained to recognize. When it arrives, the only thing standing between galactic civilization and extinction will be a species that you have spent 4 months learning to fear. Commander turned off all the displays and faced his students. Doctor's final report will include detailed psychological profiles of every cadet in this room, not because she plans to use them against you, but because she needs to understand how you think, how you fight, and how you can be protected. Because when the real threat arrives, humans are going to need all the help they can get, and they cannot protect allies they do not understand. The amphitheater was completely quiet. 24 cadets from 12 different worlds sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything they had learned. Your assignment, Commander said finally, is not to submit a threat assessment of Doctor. Your assignment is to decide whether galactic civilization is prepared for what is coming. Because ready or not, it is already on its way. He gathered his materials and walked toward the exit, pausing at the door. Class dismissed. You have a lot to think about. As the cadets filed out slowly, each lost in their own thoughts, the holographic display flickered back to life one final time. It showed the deep space monitoring stations at the edge of the galaxy, their sensors reaching out into the dark between the stars. Something was moving in that darkness, something vast and patient and completely unlike anything galactic civilization had ever imagined. And somewhere in the galaxy, 2.7 million humans continued their quiet work, gathering the knowledge they would need to defend worlds that did not even know they needed defending. The test was over. The real exam was about to begin.